Oh.
Yeah. We need to have a small little music, isn't it, Faisal? Just
Yeah, I think so.
First very exciting minutes when we are waiting for the last people to drip in, and we need some music, and but Sriya may decide. And which is good. And we do have now 23 participants already, so that is fine. That is
So I'll begin then. It's been a couple of minutes.
Yep.
Okay, great. Welcome everybody to this webinar that Wage Indicator for Foundations organizing. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Faisal for setting up this webinar in the past month. And let's begin. So this webinar is essentially on how organization as a skill contributes towards your efficiency as an intern. And given that the world is increasingly getting digital as a result of COVID and otherwise, these skills are extremely essential, although very basic. And we believe that they would help you learn a lot and hone your skills as an intern. Pauline will be sharing a little more about why this webinar is important, but I'll just take you quickly through what we have lined up today. After Pauline introduces why this webinar is important, we have Professor Kea, who will be sharing her experience and expertise dealing with data and organizing her laptop. After that, we have a panel that's being moderated by Ashlet, including our intern Mackenzie from China, and we have Anne from Vietnam. After the quick panel, we have Fiona taking a session on writing publications and organizing publication pages. So if you have any questions regarding that, we have a Q&A session right after. Following that, we have Kabir Nagadia, who's an alumni of Flame. He will be sharing his quick session on graphs and how graphs can be presented and minor questions that can really help you improve the graphs and the way you present your data. Finally, we have a session by Riya Shah, who's an FSP student at Flame, and she'll be talking about spreadsheets. Since any kind of data analysis, the fundamental step is how you organize your data and how you organize your sheet. She'll be sharing some basic tips and tricks on how you can improve how quickly you do your work. So let's begin. Pauline, over to you.
Thanks, Sriya. Thanks for the lovely introduction. And thanks, Faisal, for managing all around this Wage Indicator webinar. As you know, we have many webinars each time on topics of which we think they are crucial at this moment. Well, to be honest, the setup of this webinar came out of my head. Why? Over the last 20, 30 years already, I've been able to see a hell of a lot of desktops all around the world. I've seen how people have been organizing their desktops, sometimes their phone, but very often the desktops. I've seen how people have been organizing reports, data sets, graphs, spreadsheets, Google Sheets, etc. And I was in a role that I get as director of the Wage Indicator. I get all that information, not that I use it or create it, not at all. I get it, and then I have to send it through to parts of the teams or to fix it or to say, no, we refuse, etc. So that's the reason I see a lot. As a teacher, I don't laugh, in Russia for more than 10 years, I've seen even more laptops in different languages. And then you could see even a bigger chaos. And because of that chaos, and for me, it's a kind of fun to see that chaos, I thought it makes sense one day to explain how you can do it. And in my experience, Kea, who is the one who set it up together with me, the wage indicator system, Kea was by far the most organized of all, by saying, this is how you do it, this is how you do it, this is how you organize. And also, okay, because as you know, I'm a journalist. As journalist, you don't organize, you publish. You publish stories day by day by day. And why should a story have a code? It's in the newspaper, it's printed already, so it's not needed. So in my profession, I'm not trained to give these codes. But Kea has been, as an academic, trained to give codes to stuff and to organize systems. So then I said, well, it's good to make a small webinar in which you explain how you make a desktop who's not so messy, which means you have just a couple of items on your desktop and not thousands of items, for instance. And then how do you organize your desktop? How do you organize a data set, which is extremely difficult, but it's good to understand how Kea is doing that. What are the principles of it already? Another thing is that if you deal, as we do, with Google Sheets, you can do it on such a way that each time there is a drama. Or you can say, well, we do it systematic, nice, clean, and each time with the right date on the right moment, etc. So by getting yourself organized, not for yourself or your neighbor, but for everybody in the world, we thought this is a good topic for a webinar. Let's see whether my experience and experience of Kea, whether it's right, that it's needed for many others, or that everybody says, well, I hide my knowledge on coding and structuring, and let's see if I'm so messy as all the rest of the world or not. So let's see in the end of this afternoon whether this was the right topic to share with all of you. And great to see you all. Good luck. Back to Sriya.
Thanks, Pauline. Kea, are you ready for your panel?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes. Do you want to share my PowerPoint or shall I do so?
What would be convenient for you?
Well, if you allow me to share my screen, then I can do so.
Okay. Faisal, Akash, can one of you give Kea sharing permission?
You're allowed to share your screen.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Wait a minute, I have to show my full screen.
Yeah, you're almost there.
Where is it?
Down right under.
I am. This one. No, this one.
That one. Yep.
Okay, yes. So my presentation is about structuring your work. I'm the research coordinator, and jointly with Pauline, we started Wage Indicator long ago. Okay, I have 3 topics to discuss. I do not discuss structuring your desktop because I think it's so personal, whatever you have on your desktop. So I can show you how I organized my desktop, but that is different from what any one of you would need. So I didn't do that. I hope that you can clean up your desktop yourself. I want to discuss about structuring your writing, structuring your goals, and structuring messy information. So those are 3 topics I'd like to discuss. And the first is structuring your writing. Whatever you do, whenever you need to write a paper, a report, a thesis, whatever, please use Microsoft Word and use the styles section. It's under the tab Home, and there you will see the screenshot that I showed here, normal, table, heading. And why do you use this? Because it has 3 advantages I'll discuss in the next slide. But the main one is that it structures your text. So whenever you start writing any paper, make a template and assign each text to a style. So when you have a heading in your text, assign the style heading. Or when you have normal, assign the style normal. It allows you to be very consistent in your writing. And whenever you have done so, do not overlay words or sentences with other fonts or colors or sizes. Stick to your defined styles. And when you want to change your styles, when you have, for example, book Antka, normal style, but you want to change it into Calibri, you can do it through the style normal. So it has the advantage to structure your text. And that is really needed, particularly when the text becomes longer, many pages, you need to structure your text. And I'll show you why. On the screenshot, you can see the navigation pane in Word. So in the tab View, you can click on navigation pane, and then it shows what's on the right side of the screen. It shows the outline of your paper. In this case, it was a paper that I made long ago. So it shows you which topics are in my paper, which headings I use, which subheadings I use. It allows me to keep on an overview of what is the content of my paper. It allows you to move sections. So, for example, when you want to have 1.2 before 1.1, you just move that full section in this navigation pane. In the text, in the tab Results, you can search your paper. In the tab Pages, you can see how the pages look like. So this is a major advantage to keep control over your paper. Then why it's also an advantage to use the styles, the headings and the normal styles. It allows you to generate a table of contents of your document. So instead of starting to type a table of content manually, please don't do, but generate a table of contents from your styles. And you can do that in the tab References. There you will see a box for table of contents, and you can indicate in the table of contents how many headings and subheadings and subheadings you want in your table of content. Then as soon as you do any changes, you can click the tab Update Table, and it instantly will change your table of contents up to the most recent version. So whenever you do a writing, do not make many pages in a subheading. That is a final recommendation. Try to structure your text so that one subheading is at most 1 to 2 pages, not 10 pages. If you have a subheading of 10 pages, you really got lost and your paper is not well structured. So structure your writing. On the internet, you can see many help tools that educate you more in Microsoft Word, and I really recommend it to do so. So that is structure your writing. Then it's structure your goals. What do you want to reach out when you write a paper, do a research, whatever? Make your goals at the first step. And I use, for example, 3 research questions for a specific paper, research question 1, 2, and 3. And then I try to answer them. So Do not deviate from your objectives. E.g., if you, in your research questions, do not discuss the historic development of migration, you should not discuss this unless you really want to do the historic development of migration, and then your research objectives need to address this. So then you would add another research question: what is the historic development of migration? So those are all kind of advices. Do not discuss one country when your research objectives include global. And revise your research objective and whenever needed, and stick to the new objectives. So really spend some time in formulating your research objectives before you start writing. Revise during the research and see that you made all the objectives and not other things. So do not all of a sudden halfway the paper pops up a topic that has not been discussed in the research objectives. That makes a paper less valuable. So don't do this. Okay, structure messy information. Well, there's many information that is very messy, but any information can be structured. Do not think, hey, this is a unique case, so I cannot compare to other cases. As soon as you start thinking that, then stop doing research and start writing for newspapers, for example. Then you can do so. But whenever you want to do research, think beforehand what you want to do. If you only capture unique cases, then you cannot compare across cases. So then you run into trouble. Whenever you want to do interviews, think beforehand what you want to know. Make a list of the questions you want to ask. And as far as possible, make an interview scheme or even a survey with predefined answers. Otherwise, you cannot compare across industries, across interviews, and you're restricted to descriptive text, and you cannot analyze your data. So, for example, at first sight, the information about the minimum wages in India may seem very incomparable across states and even across scheduled employment categories within states. So we've, in Wage Indicator for the minimum wage pages, we've struggled a lot with this. There are 13,000 different minimum wages in India. So how to get grip on the, well, basically the mess, how these minimum wages were organized by all the different wage boards. So we structured this data, see the next page. We structured it first in level 1 by state, in level 2 by scheduled employment, and in the next in column H, you see how we define scheduled employment. Can we even be unskilled or skilled? Then we did a further structuring by job type, and in column G you see all the job types, whether it's highly or low skilled or job titles or whatever it is. By structuring this, we could compare all these different minimum wages in India. We could make a database that generates web pages for paycheck in India, for the paycheck website. And we can easily update. So whenever there is a wage board that revises the minimum wage rate, we update just the tab, the column not shown here, where the amounts are listed. So that is basically what I wanted to tell you about structuring. Structuring is critical. every time force yourself to structure the things that you're busy with. And thank you for listening. And in case of questions, please ask them. Okay.
Thanks, Professor Kia. That was a great presentation. I think we all learned quite a bit about how to structure our work. Does anybody have any questions for Professor Kia with regard to structuring? It could be your documents, your reports, your research papers, your databases. Okay, so I'm assuming that everyone learned quite a bit and there are no questions. Moving on to the next panel, we have a panel on organizing your laptops and the files on your computers to make them more clearer, more easy to understand and easy to navigate through. This panel will be moderated by Ashlyn, and our panelists are Mackenzie and Anne. So Anne and Mackenzie, you can start by introducing yourself. I think Ashlyn is joining in soon. I'll check with her.
Mackenzie, you want to go first or should I? Okay, I guess I will. Then I guess I will go first. Hello, everyone. I'm Nguyen, and you can call me Anh. And today I will represent our Vietnam team to share some tips in organizing our digital files on personal space. And also I want to share some problems for for people like me who have to deal with different languages in daily life. So should I start by sharing my screen or?
Yes, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, then I will share my screen. I will start from beginning. Okay, so before going into the tips and tricks section, I want to share my background so that everyone has a better view of why file organization is so important. So I'm a Vietnamese student who is currently studying in Germany, and I'm doing a 6-month internship for Wage Indicator. So my life and work, especially during the times of COVID-19, mainly revolves around working online on computers and around 3 languages: English, German, and Vietnamese. In addition, due to the need to move a lot, my laptop is compact with very little memory and RAM. Although it is strong enough to run basic programs, it is almost impossible to store too much data in the laptop itself. So how do I overcome these difficulties to provide myself with the most effective working environment? There are many ways to organize your data that you can find online, from tutorial, inspirational, and influential blogs or articles. I'm going to share with you the methods that I have found to be the most effective and that work for me. And I have been using them all the time. The first tip is to organize your data that you can find online from tutorial. I'm sorry. The first tip is organize related folders into the same root folder and name them clearly so that you can find them easily. Here you can see that I have arranged all the documents related to my studies from the first semester up to now into one file with name of each semester, each subject, and each section in the subject. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't. And you should do the same for your folders, whether it's work or entertainment related. And the second tip is that remember to clear all files and backup important files regularly. Due to the limited space on my device, I always have to consider what I will install onto my computer and what I must get rid of. I believe that many of you here are like me, who often have hundreds of photos after each vacation. Just a few trips like that and your device will overflow with dozens of similar photos that you probably won't look at again in a few years. So to get around this, I always take time after every trip to compile the photos I want to keep into a file on my laptop, then transfer them to an expansion portable drive. And there's also other options that you can use, like online storage, like iCloud or Google Drive, to like save your photos or other unnecessary files. And don't forget to delete all the unnecessary files after you're done with your process. This tip has helped me a lot to form a good habit of solving all my problems quickly and immediately, saving me a lot of time that I don't have to deal with like junk files. And the last but not less important tips I want to share with you is that to take advantage of the convenience of the desktop. I know that this might sound a bit strange to many of you because there's a lot of advice online that you don't use your desktop to store any data because it's really messy and it will slow down the working process of the machines. But it works for me because I have a really short memory, and if I hide my file too, if I hide my files too carefully, it will be impossible to find them again. But don't have your desktop like this. But let's do it like this. This is my desktop. As you can see, I divide my files according to their uses. In the lower left corner are the communication apps that I use the most. And here in the middle, the upper middle, is are the files that related to my subjects that I have in this semester, and also the working files. And here the tiny bits here is for entertainment, and these are the other files that I use common. So clearly dividing the area for each use like this both help me find files easily and doesn't mess up or slow down the processing speed of the machines. Moreover, to use essential apps like Word and Excel, don't bring them to the screen. Don't put them here on the desktop. Just use pin them to the taskbar or use the Windows search functions so you can search for them quickly. And those are the 3 tips that I think work best for me in organizing data in my laptop. Now I want to move on to the next part of my presentation. How do languages make it difficult to organize your work? I believe that there are many of you here who also come from a non-English speaking country like I do, but we are still here and exchanging our thoughts in English. So do you guys ever have problems switching between languages? Well, I sure do, because if you don't know how the Vietnamese language works, let me tell you that we have an enormous set of tones and require special marks to identify, which basically looks like this. And the German is on the right side. It's not better. So set aside that it's difficult to pronounce on these, on this dialect, I want to point out that even in the seemingly simple word of machines, different language also require different treatment, right from the way they are typed. Typing is the the basic skill when it comes to computer, isn't it? But we Vietnamese got to learn special key for tone marks by heart, and the German. They must use another set of keyboard, not the QWERTY like we use, but the quest one. So you can say that you are bilingual or multilingual person unless you know the frustration of typos. Do you ever have typos? I think it's really common, whether it's your fault or it's because the computer system just doesn't support your language. And this is probably the worst problem I have as a multilingual person when using a computer. Not only is it bad for your mental health, but it also slows down your working process, and because you constantly have to fix spelling mistakes. So what did I do to overcome these issues? First and foremost, remember to always check which language your system and your file are using. For Windows, because I'm using Windows, so for Windows, the system language is shown at the bottom right corner. As here you can see, it's Vietnamese. For most computer, the default language is English, and you have to add new languages as extensions onto your computer to be able to use them. And this can easily be done by going onto settings and add a new language. Here you can see that I have like 4 keyboards and 4 sets of languages on my computer so that I can use them. Why this is English Germany is because it will provide the German keyboard, and it's different from the normal English keyboard. So I have to have it installed too. Keep in mind that to change the system language before working on any file or data to avoid these kind of people. You can see that the first slide that I tried to like type English when the language, the system language is Vietnamese, and it made a lot of mistakes like here. Okay. And the second tips I want to share with you is that you should take advantages of the translation softwares and apps. Google Translate is definitely familiar to everyone, but I want to add that now the other apps like other software like Microsoft Office also have a pretty good automatic translation that you can use to serve your purpose like this. This actually, I discovered this because I have to work in the past few months when working on the cost of living project for wage indicator, and I have to work with a whole lot of languages that I don't know a thing of, and it helped me a lot. So yeah, languages are tools, and use them and don't let them stand in your way to your goals. And that concludes my part of tips and tricks to free your workspace and to smooth your working process. I hope that my presentation will help you to achieve the highest work efficiency. And for any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for that, Anna. Yeah, is there any questions from anyone? Yes, Pauline?
Would you recommend the same tricks as for somebody who has a laptop in Russian, for instance? So because you explained it by having English Vietnamese, is it then the same recommendation for when you have a Russian laptop?
Yeah, sure. Because actually, if it's only for Windows, because I'm only using Windows, I can say for other system. But it's actually work because Windows now support a various range of languages that you can install onto your laptop. I actually can install other language that I don't use, such as Thai or Laos or so on. Yeah, and they work.
So, and may I ask another question, Sriya? And so, Anne, did your structuring process started when you were in Vietnam, or was it when you started in Germany?
It's actually only started when I came to Germany, because before I have another laptop, and when I came to Germany, I have to change my laptop because the old one was too old, you know. And then and actually my study in Germany is quite different from one from in Vietnam. So I have to restructure my working style. And also I didn't really think much about structuring my computer back when I was in Vietnam because it didn't require me to do that. I didn't have much work to do back then, but now I have, and I need to figure out some way to like help me in that, you know.
Lovely. Hand over to Ashlyn and Mackenzie. Yeah?
Hi, yeah. I have a question as well. What would you say to someone who is starting to think about clearing up their desktop and thinks it's like a massive task and their desktop's too messy to do it? How would you go about getting started with it?
I think they should do it little by little, not all at once, you know. Just try to figure out what is the most important to keep. And I always do it like this when I like receive a big range of data. I first have a folder, and I put them all in there, and then I create another folder and pick one by one what is important to the new folder, and then when I'm done with that, I just delete the old folder, and that all the unnecessary files are gone, and I can just get to keep the important ones. Yeah. And it's also the same if you want to organize your desktop, you know, you just need to figure out what is needed and keep them in files. I don't know how to explain that anymore.
Great, thank you. That was a really good explanation. Let me hand over to Mackenzie, who has another presentation for us.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'll share my screen. Okay, so I'll keep on with the end's topic. So the first tip of how to organize file is to separate files into corporate files and personal files, because many people use the same computer, phone, tablet, or other device for anything and everything. So it's important to separate personal and work file for quick and easy access. You can do so by creating separate folders with clear, specific labels and put all of the files and documents under the root folder named by the company name, like wage indicator. And the second tip is to organize file into a hierarchy of folders. An easy way to think about this is like a filing cabinet with drawers, folders, and subfolders. Files can live at any point within the hierarchies. And the more detailed you can be, the easier it'll be to find documents later on. Of course, you don't want to create too many folders since that will lead to disorganization as well. So determine your most important topics and sections and stick to your system. And the third tip is to name folders appropriately. This seems simple, but it's not really that simple, because you should use descriptive file names for easy identification and retrieval. And if you have lots of data, it'll be important to specify where the data came from, so we can know whether the data is raw or processed by you. Also, it's important to bear in mind that the naming should be meaningful both for you and for new staff who do not involve in the works you've done, so that they won't have difficulties catching up. And the last one is backing up, and Anne has talked about it. So yeah, it's really important to always back up the files and data. So when your laptop crashes or you accidentally delete the files, you still have a copy of the files and work you made. Okay, so I'll move on to the second part, the language. I changed my language of laptop and some software into language, and I'll discuss what's the benefits of doing so. Since one day we might have to hand over our files and data to someone else. If the language of the contents or the file names is not in English, we have to translate it again. And this process is a waste of time. Accordingly, though even my English is not really good and proficient, I never use Chinese, which is my first language, to do any of my works. By doing so, I do not have to face the problems of varying languages. And besides, there are some other benefits of using language. Every job, company, and industry has their jargons or sets of vocabularies and idioms that are specific to them. Hence, if we do not turn our software, for example, Google Analytics, into English, we will not know what's the meaning of the metrics other colleges use. We will not know what's bounce rates or what's organic search or what's session when you're discussing with your team. You have to translate it once you have time, and this makes the discussion inefficient because you only know these metrics in your first language, and this will lead to communication problems. Besides, because we sometimes need to share our screen during meetings and have some discussion about the work, changing PowerPoint, Word, Excel, Google, and maybe Tableau into English makes the discussion more smoothly because the your operation can can assist you if it's in English. Yeah, so this is my presentation, and thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mackenzie. That was another great presentation. I'll kick off the questions for this one. I was wondering, what would you say is the best type of backup to have? Would you say a USB, or would you say like a big proper backup system? Which would you say is the best?
I don't know which one is the best because I'm a rookie, but my personal way is to save these into Google Drive into cloud, because if you use a USB or how to say that the box that saves your files, you may accidentally lose them. And if you save them into the cloud, you will not lose it because yes, it's in the cloud. Yeah.
Great, thank you for that. Does anyone else have any questions for Mackenzie?
Well, I can say this is a lovely insight, and this is. And can I continue? Yeah. And so I love what Mackenzie is saying because it explains how difficult it is for anyone else who has another language than English already. So thanks for this insight. It's so helpful for anyone else. Really great. And over back to Ashley.
Yes, no, I agree. As someone whose mother tongue is English, I found it really interesting that you suggest that everyone translates it to English. That was quite an interesting insight for me to get. No, yeah, it was really good. Thank you. I will let the next person take on.
Yeah, if I may just say something as well, just yeah, thank you both. Presentations really useful, very practical, very useful. Even I might not use, because I'm an English speaker myself, but knowing that those options are there and being able to suggest them to other people because I work globally is just really great to know. So thank you all of you on this panel, all three of you.
So step by step, we start realizing how much others are suffering. Yeah. I do have a quick message about Fiona. Fiona is not yet there. She's there in a couple of minutes.
I am here.
You're there. You can start already. Okay.
I can start. I'm just not gonna put my video on because I look like Frankenstein. But other than that, I'm here and I can talk.
Fine. Perfect.
For those wondering why I look like Frankenstein, I just had a surgery on my lip, so that's why. But I can talk and everything's fine. Shall I share my screen?
Yes, sure. You can share your screen, please.
Okay, let me see. I'm gonna start my presentation. So I think most of you have seen the program, right? So my presentation will be about Wage Indicators publication page. Let me go back to Zoom. And I hope if I do it like this, that you can see my presentation, right?
Yes, we can see
Yes,
it.
great. So I don't know to what extent most of you know, but the Wage Indicator has a publication page where we post and publish all of the relevant publications, academic publications, but also presentations, one-pagers, handbooks, and all these kind of publications that the Wage Indicator makes, or publications that have been made with Wage Indicator data, will be published on our publication pages. And with the publication pages, as you can see at the top right corner, we now already have publications. We started with the publication pages in 2001, which means that we have 20 years of publication pages, and each page of the publication pages has a bit depending on the year and how many programs or projects, for example, we had that year, has about, I think the average is about 30 publications per year. So in all these years, in all these 20 years, we have a hell of a lot of publications, I can tell you. And of course, what we would like is that these publications are nicely organized, but also that people that come from outside, be it researchers or people who are interested in learning what we do, can easily find the publications, and that the publications can easily be used also for academic research again. So as you can see, within the Wage Indicator websites, when it comes to the publications, we have three areas where you can find the publications. First of all, if you go to the home page of the Wage Indicator Foundation, then you go to Wage Indicator and then publications, you will find, depending on dates, all of the most recent publications in a list. So that's just, you can scroll down and you find publications from November, October, and then September, August, and onwards. And if you click on the title of the publications, you will go to the publication page of that specific publication. That's on the left, on the right, and then on the bottom. And each of these publication pages has the title of the publication, but also the abstract, and you can, there on that page, you can download the report if available, because there are sometimes publications that are published in academic journals for which you have to pay. So sometimes, but this is rare actually, there are sometimes occasions when we cannot publish the publication yet on the website, but then we will post here on this page a link to where you can find the publication. And so next to that, so we have the overview, the general overview of the latest publications. We have the publication page per publication, and we have the publication list per year. So each, so that's on the left of the screen. Each year, we have a lot of publications coming in, and all of these publications are alphabetically listed. With the name of the main author as first list in the alphabet. We have a list of all of the publications of that year, as you can see on the left. And I hope that some of you have already noticed that the way that the publications are written down, for example, especially in the overview list of all of the publications, for example, per year, are all similar in the way that they are listed. So each last name we start each last name with, we start each publication listed with the last name of the main author. Then we do the year in which it's published between brackets. Then we have the main title of the publication, which is often with italic font. And then we have the place and institute where the publication has been published and the main language in which the publication has been published. This is the way that we always list our publications. And have we thought about this? No, we have not. I hope everybody can see my second slide now. Is that correct? Yes.
Yes, we can see.
Great, great. One of the reason why everything is listed in the same way is that we have chosen a couple of years back to list all of the publications on the website in APA style, and that's a style of academic referencing, which is, I think, this one comes from the American Psychology Association, if I'm not mistaken, and in the presentation I've listed well, the website on where you can find all of the tips and tricks on how to do the referencing using APA. But the secret is that it's all about consistency. So if you choose, it doesn't really matter which publication type or like which APA, which referencing type you choose, as long as you use that one consistently. So don't start doing public, like academic referencing 2 or 3 different styles, because then it becomes a mess. So the reason is if you choose one, stick to it and use that one consistently. Next to that, when it comes to academic referencing, it's really, really important. Your interpunction is really important. So using where you put your dot, where you put your comma, where if you write it in italic, yes or no. All of these things are crucial and are also make sure that your publication list looks nice and cleaned up, but also that it is, well, that it looks properly referenced in an academic way, which also makes sure that you can then use the way, use your publication style or your publication page in a very, in an academic way. And as I said, if you choose one of your referencing styles, in this case we chose APA, you can cite just about anything. Like I said, the publication page from the Wage Indicator is not only, we not only publish academic articles, but we also publish handbooks or PowerPoint presentations, or we reference books or one-pagers or handbooks. And in this sense, with APA, you can reference just about and cite just about anything, as long as you do it consistently with the APA rules. Why is this so important? It's both because it's also because it looks nice, and with being consistent, your publication page is not a mess. But at the same time, it's also important for SEO purposes. For the SEO purposes, so search engine optimization through Google, but also other search engines, we have chosen to have a publication for like a page for each publication. And that publication is then again referenced to the general page and the year of publication. When we make a publication page for one publication, we always enable the SEO data function in the page. So that means that that page can now be properly found in all of the search engines when you Google, for example, on the author's name. So we have, for example, a lot of publications written by Professor Gea Tijdens, who's also here in the meeting. And so if you Google for a publication on minimum wages by Gea Tijdens in 2021, I'm sure, 100% sure, that you will most likely find the publication page of the Wage Indicator in your Google search. But that's not only it. Of course, we have a lot of interlinkages in the website that reference back to publications. So, for example, in project pages or in event pages, we will often have a link to a certain publication, to a certain academic publication, but also in project proposals or something like that. And then we obviously also need to make sure that the links are not dead or that the publication is properly referenced or properly linked. And thank God Gea does this very often. So we regularly also check for dead links within the publication page to make sure that the publications are to be found. And Next to all of this, as you might have been able to see, in our publication page, a lot of the publications are written in English. So we have between brackets EN, the reference for English, listed. But sometimes we also have, for example, a publication in Burmese from Myanmar, or we have a publication in French or Portuguese or something. And then we will use the exact same style of phrasing and wording as we would do for an English publication, but just in Burmese, for example. So it doesn't, the consistency, even in different languages, stays the same, and that's the secret. And so once again, why would you do this? And that is because we often use our publication page, for example, when we go and apply for an academic research fund, for example, from the European Union or something. And then we have to reference our academic, but also our publications in this research proposal. And then you also have to do the referencing in a certain academic referencing style. So because we already have this consistently done, we don't have to redo this for every new proposal writing, for example, but we already have the publications ready. And this is maybe a little bit academic, but it is the way that it is. Also, the way that you reference and the way that that's done consistently also shows that as an organization, you're not really a mess. And there was one more thing that I wanted to share with you, because that was the idea, is that like, for example, how do you make sure that you have a nice title for your publication? That doesn't really matter what type of title you have for your publication, as long as that is also consistent with the way that the rest of your title is written. So the message of my presentation today is that consistency is key. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Fiona. That was a great presentation. And I think it's quite important from an SEO point of view. So I'm sure there'll be a few digital marketing students, apart from just students of social science, that could benefit from that presentation. Next up, we have Kabir. Kabir is an alumni of Flame, and he's working with Wage Indicator right now in the business analytics team. So over to you, Kabir. He will be covering a bit about graphs, and you can sort of elaborate on what you'll be talking about.
Hi, Shreya. Thank you so much. I'm going to present my screen. Is it visible?
Yes.
Okay. Before I start my presentation, I'd like to thank Danny and Rupa ma'am for helping me with the content of this presentation. I'm going to be talking about basically good and bad graphs and how to make a good graph, and what not to do that might lead you to making a bad graph. So I'm going to assume that everyone knows what a graph is. It's a pictorial and geometric representation of numeric data. And graphs generally present themselves in various forms. So you have bar graphs, you have certain line graphs, you have time series graphs, pie charts, geographic heat maps, and you also have bubble charts. There are various kinds of graphs. And what this presentation essentially concerns itself is what a graph does and how well it can do it. So imagine I give you a table with a lot of raw data. There are a lot of variables and there are a lot of rows. It would be really hard for you to track the changes and see what story the data is trying to tell you. Instead, if I, let's say, plot it on a graph, you might be able to spot these changes a lot more easier. So the essential job, or like the main job of a graph, is to synthesize and condense the data into information that is a lot more accessible to us and something that is a lot more tangible for our brains to imagine, which is why we have graphs that go up and down and we can say, okay, the data is going up and down. But instead, if I give you a big column, it might be a lot more harder for you to track these changes. So the main job of a graph is to simplify the data. So before I get into good graphs, I'd like to show you what some of the bad graphs look like. And here's this collection. So for example, this graph, if you look at it, there are a lot of trend lines. This is a time series graph, and for different countries, we don't know what the graph is showing because the axes have not been labeled. But on first glance, we can see that the graph, it's too messy and it's hard to see where each line is going because it's surrounded by so many lines. And also that there are missing grid lines. You should also notice that there are two y-axes. One is a primary axis and one is a secondary axis, but we don't know which line corresponds to which axis. So it's really hard to tell what the data is telling us. Then we come to some time series graphs. In the left graph, you might notice that there is no linear progression of time as you go from one bubble to the next. So for example, if this is the first week, then this is the second week, and it just goes in a very haphazard manner. Similarly, in this graph, you can try tracking it with, let's say, your cursor. Since this is not an interactive graph where you hover your mouse over, let's say, the graph of one line, you most definitely will not be able to understand how the trends of the number of deaths per day during COVID in every country. Right. So it's very important for time series graphs to have a certain linear progression. This is very haphazard and it's very hard to understand. It's just too difficult to understand. Next up, we have a graph where, let's say, we have the blue line represents the MRP price of a certain item, and the red line represents, or these peaks, they represent the number of sales. Now, let's say if we assume that this item is something like a packet of biscuits, where the price will be too low, in comparison to that metric, the outlet sales are going to be in thousands. So the outlet sales will definitely overpower or overshadow the amount or like the MRP price. So that because of that, the blue line is going to be close to steady, or it's going to be, we're just going to see it coinciding with the 0 x-axis, right? So this is an example of a bad graph where you're getting only half the information because you're not using a secondary axis. If we take this pie chart for an example, it's really hard to understand what's exactly going on in this part or on the upper part where the percentages are too small because it's too clustered. And second, I need to sit with a shade card to see, okay, what does the 3% and what does the 1% really correspond to, which categories it corresponds to. So these are some of the examples of really bad graphs. And from these graphs, I've come up with a non-exhaustive checklist that might be handy when you're using these graphs. So the first question that you need to ask yourself is the graph too cluttered? And if the graph is too cluttered, you might consider using a secondary axis or removing a couple of the variables. If it's a time series graph, is it a linear progression of time, or is the time on the x-axis jumbled? Usually when we don't have time on the x-axis, the graph usually tends to get jumbled. So it's for beginners, it's a thumb rule to have time as either on the x-axis or the y-axis. And if it's a line or bar chart, are the lines overlapping one another and are they hiding some of the information in the background? The fourth question is, does one variable have values that are so big in comparison to the other that they're overlapping, that the other is overlapping the x-axis? This happened in this case where the outlet sales were a lot in comparison to the MRP. And the last question, which encapsulates the other four questions, is the graph really simplifying the information that you're trying to convey? Is it telling a story in a more simplified manner than what the raw data is? And these are some questions that I think would really help in making good graphs. Lastly, these are some of the references for some really good graphs. So let's say we have Gapminder and the graph that I showed initially, this one. This is a bubble chart from Gapminder, and Gapminder has really good dynamic graphs where you can see the trends of different countries over the years or different regions over the years. And you can have differently labeled X and Y axis, and you don't need to worry about time as one of the axes, right? And then we have, we have data repositories like OECD, World Bank, UN Data, and Our World in Data. These are really good places to scout for good data sets. But they also have really cool infographics. For example, Our World in Data has very neatly organized heat maps. It has a lot of good bar charts, area charts. So these are resources that you should definitely look out for. And some of the tools that maybe beginners can use for creating good graphs, Microsoft Excel. With Stata, you need to know a little bit of the Stata programming language, but once you do, it's a lot of the charts get extremely simple, like histograms or box plots. Then you definitely have Tableau and Google Data Studio that automatically select the dimensions and the measure values for your graphs. And lastly, these are the image sources for the bad graphs were taken from wiz.wtf, and the other examples were taken from Tableau and Our World in Data. Thank you so much. I'd be open to some questions.
Thanks, Kabir. That was a great presentation. Does anybody have any questions for Kabir? Okay, if not, then we can move on to Ria's presentation. So Ria's a FSP student at Flame, and she's also co-managing the Wage Indicator Research Lab with me. So you can also reach out to her after her presentation if you still have any questions. She'll be talking a bit about spreadsheets and how managing your spreadsheets better can help you with working more efficiently. And this is a task that is required at any internship, any kind of work that you're doing, data related or otherwise, requires you to have some knowledge of how you organize your spreadsheet. So over to you, Ria.
Thank you for the introduction, Shreya. So I'll just begin by sharing my screen. And here's a sample data set which I've taken from the World Bank, and it's about the unemployment in countries across the world. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was probably one of the coolest features of Google Sheets, which is the ability to share it and to work on it collaboratively with a group of people. So to do it, we click on share, and out here we can add the email IDs of the people that we'd like to share it with. Another option would be to copy the link and share it on, say, a WhatsApp group. But here we need to make sure that the settings are what we want. So for example, I can choose that anyone with this link in the world has the right to view, comment, or edit on this sheet. So moving on from that, I'll talk about the data specifically. So here, as you can see, the data isn't exactly the cleanest. So the first thing that we need to do is just make it look more standard. And I'm going to work on a copy of this sheet, because if I do make any mistake, then it's always nice to have it. It's always nice to be able to refer to what the original data set. Another standard for this is to make sure that the very first row only contains the variable names and not anything else. Like here they have the date on which the sheet was last updated or the title. So here I'm just going to delete these 3 rows. The next thing is I'm going to remove any unnecessary columns. So this has data for several years, but if my study is only going to look at some of the more recent years, I think there was an error in copying it. But here, if I just want to fill it up, because I know that this is for each year, I can just drag the years down the row. So so here I'm going to first delete all the unnecessary rows. So say in my case, that's everything for the year 2000. And if I also don't want the indicator code, I can remove that too. And something like what's in column C might be important to in the overall analysis, but since I don't want to see it right now, I can just choose to hide the column instead. So now I can see all the data that I need. And the next thing that I need to do is make sure that everything is standard. So as you can see, some countries are in bold, some cells have been highlighted randomly, or they've been boxed up and the font is different. So in order to standardize it, I'm just going to click on to the top left. and make sure the font is correct everywhere. I'll also pick the size I want, make sure that nothing is bold, reset the background, and remove any of the unnecessary boxes. Personally, I like to have the names of my variables in bold just so that I know what I'm looking at. Now, after standardizing this formatting, another thing that I would want to do is freeze certain rows and panes. So going from view, I can choose to freeze the first row as well as say the first two columns. And now as I scroll through the sheet, I know exactly which country I'm looking at data for or which year I'm looking at it in. And if also the number of decimal places isn't equal in all of them. So say for the Arab world, if I want to reduce the number of decimals, I can just select all the data and remove the decimals up until it reaches 2 decimals, for example. The next thing is, again, something that's really cool in Excel. So I may want to know where exactly I have missing data. So to do that, I'm going to select all the columns that I'm looking at and apply some conditional formatting. So to do that, you go to Format and select Conditional Formatting. So here I can change the rule and from is not empty, I'll say is empty. And basically I'm telling Google Sheets to color all the cells which are empty in a blue color. And there are many other rules that you can pick with, like you can pick something like highlight all the values which are greater than a particular number or less than a particular number, or other rules are related to text or dates. So after applying this, I can just leave this, or I can choose to add another rule, which I don't want to do right now. And then finally, there are different formulae which we can apply on Excel. So in order to do that, I'm going to add a column to the right. And another thing that we can do with these columns is we can like drag them wherever we want them to be and just play around with it. So one thing that Excel allows you to do is it allows you to do basic calculations. So if I want to see the percentage increase in unemployment in Afghanistan from the years 2019 to 2020, I can just say is equal to, and in brackets, I'll put the value of 20 minus 19 and divide that by 19. And now Excel also gives me the option to autofill. And now I have the percentage increase for all the countries in my data set. For the countries where I do have missing data, you can see that there is an error, since of course there is no data to calculate this. Some other formulae which are really interesting would be something like a VLOOKUP. So here I'm just going to add a column to the right, and say I want to know which income group each country is falling into. I have a sheet which specifies the country code, the country name, and which income group they fall into. And if I want to add that data onto this sheet, I can use a formula like a VLOOKUP, which will allow me to first select the country that, the text that is common in both sheets, then the range that I'm looking for the data in. So out here, it's in this particular thing, and I'm going to select these 3 columns. The next thing that I can do is I'll specify 3, since the data that I'm looking for is in the 3rd column of my sheet. And finally, I'll just put a false in to say that I want the search to be exact. And by double clicking, I've done this for all the countries for which data is available. There are also other formulae which you can use. So for example, if I want to say if this is blank, then I need to know. So if I say if, and here I'll use the function which says is blank. And I'm basically saying if C2 is blank, then tell me that it is blank. Otherwise, leave it as it is. And now all my blank cells have been highlighted by my if formula. So there are several formulae which are really helpful and that you can use. And as in when you need to use something, you will get more familiar with it. So Google Sheets help is something that's really helpful for this. It basically summarizes all the functions and gives you a short description of the parameters it takes in as an input, and also what the purpose of the function is. Another way you can do this is, say, for example, I want to translate something. I can just say is equal to Google Translate. And now if I don't know the parameters, I can just look at what's showing up below it, or select learn more to get a better idea of what is expected. So in my opinion, the best way to use Excel or Google Sheets is to just play around with it, play around with some data, and familiarize yourself with everything that it has to offer. I don't think there's anyone who can say for sure that they know everything that Excel has to offer, because it's so vast and it can do so much for us, and it can make our work so much easier. So I hope this was a really quick session which helped you understand the basics of Excel. That will open you up to learning and diving deeper into this. If you have any questions, I am free to take them.
So thank you so much, Ria. It was a wonderful presentation. And we are looking for anyone to ask any questions.
I have a question. What would you say is the most helpful function that you know of on Google Sheets?
So personally, in my use, I see myself using the VLOOKUP function a lot, and the if, which is why I spoke about them. But I think depending on the project that you're looking at, it can be really, really different for each one of us.
Thank you so much, Ria. And thank you all. It was a very good presentations. We are very happy to have you all. Thank you for the presenters, for the attendees. So we are finished, unless anyone have any question. All right. Bullion, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I'm wondering whether this type of information as what is given now and shared with all of us, is this what we would like to have more? This absurd practicalities. Do we need this more, or is this too easy for everybody? Let me know.
Thank you so much.
No answer?
Sure. We need it, yeah. Sure.
More, please. More of this, says Ria. Because this level of a practical webinar is by far the first time in our life. Usually we have official presentations about research, etc. And now we have, that's a first step in structuring, which is really another topic. But for me, it gave a lot of insight. I hope it's the same for others. True?
100%.
Yeah. Let's continue. And an applause for Faisal.
Yes, so, yeah, sure, thank you.
And good, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
I have another question, maybe. Yes. Will all of the presentations be shared with everybody? I think that might be useful, so people can maybe look back at what was presented, or look at the relevant links or something like that.
Yes, sure. We can send them all the presentations. Sure.
And what will happen with the YouTube movie? Can we keep that, Niels? Do you know? And Akash?
The stream won't be kept,
just
but we
be
have a
stored on
recording
YouTube. So Akash, go on.
The streaming won't be kept because it's a live streaming, but we have a recording of the whole meeting. We can edit that and then put it on our YouTube channel.
Yes, we could. I think so.
I think actually YouTube actually it shares it, the stream.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then good.
So we don't even have to do it manually.
So then we can have all the presentations which are made, plus the streaming of YouTube in the agenda page, so then it's all stays together, would be great, and then we can share that with everybody. Talking about structuring. Then so cool. Thanks a lot. Very nice. Thank you. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Sharia, do you have anything to say?
That was good. Congratulations on being able to organize the webinar. It was quite good. And we'll probably take feedback from interns as well and whether they want more webinars like this. And yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and we
Thanks,
can
everybody. That was really fantastic. Really fantastic. Well done.
Maybe we make a YouTube channel only with what kind of funny mistakes you can make in graphs or in publication list, and what so how to avoid your funny mistakes, or so, or how to organize your desktop, and showing terrible examples of how it also can be. The presentation of Anne, where it all started with, was also good, huh? Really practical, and Ikea, the top structure with her information, very good. I think it was lovely. Really insight in what we have in the team, huh? What we just can do ourselves. And Ashlyn, how about managing a panel? Was it okay still?
Yeah, I think it went well. Sorry I was late. I had 2 o'clock my time in my head, and I was just working away on the social media posts and completely lost track of time. So I apologize for that. But yeah, no, I think it went well.
Yeah. Well, that's when you work global, then all times are different all the time, huh? It is, so that's good to see. So, and there was a nice variation of different interns from different universities, I think, in the end, which is also good. And I see Alanut and Faye were also there, so good you were here. And Nee is there too, our new intern from